Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. In this video today I'll be talking about emotions. What are they, how they arise, how they can actually serve us, and what we can do to feel more in control of our emotions. So before we delve in today, I just really want to clear one important thing up. Emotions are not bad. We have this kind of cultural belief that if we experience what we class as a negative emotion or something that's unpleasant, something that causes us to feel angry or upset or sad, that we have to somehow push it away, that it's not okay. And in fact, there's space for all of these emotions, and all of these emotions are really important for us to have and really important for us to experience. These emotions help us to decide what it is that we need. These emotions help to motivate us, and these emotions are really there to keep us safe. So if we look at emotions from an evolutionary perspective, the brain, when we process information, the brain is wired to keep us safe, basically, and that's how we've evolved. So when we take that nugget of information and put that into how our emotions become processed, what basically happens is that we pick up on a threat, something that we find unpleasant. So that can be an external threat, but it can also be an internal threat, like our thoughts. So we pick up on that, and the way the brain works is that the message or the signal of that being a threat is sent to the emotional center of our brain quicker than it's sent to the rational areas or the problem-solving areas of our brain. And the reason that this happens is because speed is a necessity when we need to get ourselves out of danger. So if we go back, way back to those days when we were living on the Sahara Desert and we perhaps needed to get away from a threat as quick as possible. Perhaps we see something in the distance and we're trying to figure out, hey, is that a saber-toothed tiger or is it just a really big rock? There's no time to critically think. There's no time to stand and think, I'm going to evaluate this situation. We need to get out of there, and we need to get out of there fast. So that's why we've evolved this fast train of connection between what is an automatic thought and what is an automatic emotional reaction. Now, these emotional reactions have served us throughout our whole evolution, before the time when we had CCTV cameras or perhaps certain laws that kept us safe, or any of the other things that we might rely on today that makes it safe for us to go out into the street and not be fear of being bludgeoned by somebody or, found in a ditch or some other really scary thing like that. Yeah, that doesn't happen as much these days. We live in a, generally speaking, much more safer society. So these automatic reactions and automatic triggers of emotions have kept us safe. They're the reason why we're here today, and they continue to keep us safe. How many times have we had to have, throughout day-to-day life, an automatic emotional reaction? Perhaps, the car in front of you suddenly slams their brakes out, or, you're driving and a kid runs out in front of you, and that reaction happens so fast, and the emotion is there, the adrenaline rush is there, the physical reaction is there, the whole chain of events, thought, emotion, physical reaction, all happens before we've even had a blink of an eye. And this happens because it keeps us safe. However, not all the time do these emotional reactions become triggered to save ourselves or to save others. In fact, a lot of the time we perceive threats when in fact there isn't a threat. Now, this can be made up of a variety of different reasons, which I will get into in a moment. And these threats can be, like I said earlier, they can be external threats or they can be internal threats. So that's to say, it can be the threat of maybe fear of being made redundant in your job. That's a very real fear, and it's an external problem. Or it can be an internal problem where we perceive something in such a way, and because of our thinking, we make it bigger. Often within therapy, we find that even when it is a real tangible external threat, our thinking style, how we perceive the event, can actually exasperate it and make it worse. So that's really what I want to talk about today. It's not about getting rid of emotions. It's not about trying to suppress emotions or control them. But what we're actually trying to do is look at how we can better manage them and find a little bit more balance as well. Now, how we think can really radically change how we feel. So it's important to have a look at that, and we'll work through this as we go through the video. What's also important to note is that we need to see our emotions. We need to face our emotions and be able to deal with them. When we're not, we get caught in what's called avoidance coping. So that means that, something's happening inside of you. You're not feeling great. You're feeling stressed. You may be feeling tired. You may be feeling sad. And instead of actually working through that and problem solving it, we try to put a band-aid over it. So we maybe decide to have a glass of wine. Maybe we decide to binge watch Netflix and just have total avoidance. Maybe we decide to eat anything that really takes our mind off the actual problem itself. Sometimes we need to do this. Sometimes if the feeling is very, very large, so on a scale of 0 to 10, if this feeling is a 10, actually, maybe the best thing you can do in that particular time is to just find a way to step back, create a little bit of space. So it could very well be watching some TV or anything that helps you to just disconnect for a little while, just to be able to, as I said, create space so that we can then go back and we have a little bit of more mental capacity to be able to deal with it. But generally speaking, day-to-day emotions that cause us to react are not really a 10. I think it would be fair to say that most of the time, these kind of emotions, although they might feel bigger, will probably be more like a 6, a 7, or an 8. However, going back to avoidance coping, when we continuously avoid and avoid and avoid, nothing ever gets dealt with. And what happens is that we have a problem. It doesn't go anywhere because we've avoided it. Then we have another problem because that's life. There's always going to be more. And then we have another problem. Oh dear. And then we have another problem. And we end up consuming more and avoiding more and coping less until we get to the point where this glass, this imaginary cup of how much I can take, is absolutely overflowing. And the problem is now it's overflowing with all these different things that we don't know what the problem is because there's so many different things going on there. There's so many different triggers that it's hard to say, you know what, I just don't feel like getting up and showering this morning because I'm really peed off that I didn't get that job and I feel very sad about it and it's just making me feel like a failure and this is what's going through my mind. That would be so much easier if we could pinpoint it like that. But when we avoid, there's so many different layers that when we get to this point of overwhelm and almost a sensation of burnout and just that complete drain, emotional drain, is really difficult to pinpoint because we've dealt with so much. So that's really difficult to get into in this video, and I will come back to that at a later point, how we can work through layers of emotions when there's so many different things going on at once. But right now, what I want to talk about is how we can deal with that emotional reaction as and when it arises. So the emotion doesn't happen on its own. The emotion happens from an external or an internal event, plus an automatic thought, plus the automatic triggering of an emotion, which then triggers a physiological response. So maybe sweating of the palms, a speeding up of the heart, or maybe a feeling of tiredness, maybe a feeling of just, wanting to give up, a feeling of that, that sinking kind of a feeling. It's a physiological response tied in with the cognitive and the emotional as well. So what's really important is to actually have a look at those thoughts. Now, this does take practice. So, if you've worked through the suggestions in this video and then tomorrow morning you find that, trying to get the kids into the car and get them to school and you find yourself being triggered and then you're like, damn it, I watched that video and I still can't control my emotions. Take it easy. Don't be so tough on yourself. This isn't going to happen overnight. It takes practice. You have to bear in mind that a lot of this, what we call this automatic thoughts and automatic emotional reactions, they're habits that have been built up over time. So it just takes a little bit of time to unlearn those habits, maybe go back a few steps and learn that we actually don't need to behave in a certain way. Again, I want to highlight we're not trying to get rid of the emotion. So you might actually still find that an automatic emotion emerges, but it's what we do with it then once it emerges. So as I said earlier, these emotions don't just happen in a vacuum and they are tied up with how we think, and therefore how we think can dramatically change how we feel. So there are normally 3 different factors which really influence our thoughts. So one of those is our core beliefs, the understanding and the beliefs that we have about ourselves, about others, and about the world in general. So these core beliefs might sound something like, I'm not lovable, nobody can be trusted, I'm not a likable person. You might have good core beliefs as well, which I hope you do, I am a warm person. Anything that you take as being real about yourself or about others or about the world, they're our core beliefs. Not necessarily reality. Again, this is a lot to get into in this video, but just to highlight that it's one of the important factors that make up emotions. We also then have intermediate beliefs. So these are conclusions that we take away from events, which can then affect our behavior. So these are often conditional. If I had more money, I would be happier. If I was thinner, I would be more lovable. If I had done X, Y would be possible. So they're called our intermediate beliefs. And then we come to automatic thoughts. Now, automatic thoughts are really what I want to be getting to today. So our automatic thoughts are often made up of past experiences. They're made up from the voices of our peers, of our parents' opinions, things that perhaps we haven't challenged as we've gone through life. Society and culture also have a huge impact on our automatic thoughts. And automatic thoughts often don't reflect reality. We also don't choose to have an automatic thought. That's why it's called automatic. It pops up. So it's what we then decide to do with that automatic thought, which can then make all the difference in how an emotion is triggered, or how an emotion can then go on to affect how we feel and affect how we behave as well. So what we want to do to help us in managing our emotion is what's called cognitive restructuring. This isn't positive thinking. It's not trying to replace one thought for another. What we're actually doing with cognitive restructuring is just really scanning the thoughts and recognizing what's present, and just generally recognizing how what we think affects how we feel. It keeps coming back to that all the time. So when we're getting into the nuts and bolts of cognitive restructuring, there are several steps that we go through, and you can go through these when you're having an emotional response or after emotional response, and then again keep practicing it, and then over time this becomes easier and easier to put into practice. So as I said earlier, it's really important to, as a first step, recognize the emotion, to label it, to be able to just take a second to realize what's going on. Obviously, if you can, in an ideal world, you might be able to remove yourself from a situation, even if it's just to go to the bathroom. And sometimes this isn't possible. So research has shown that even just labeling the emotion, even just saying, I'm feeling sad right now, is enough to be able to re-engage our brain. Remember what we were talking about earlier on, about the emotional brain kind of kicking in and firing up. Well, the minute we bring that labeling online and we recognize what's happening, we're then actually kicking in our problem-solving brain as well. That's not to say that we'll immediately feel better, but this is an executive executive functioning part of the brain, so it helps us to control. Help being the operative word here. So what we want to do in this situation is, once we've recognized the feeling, is to look at the thoughts. Then we want to work back and we want to have a look at the thoughts that have accompanied that feeling. So it might help to just refresh your memory of what the triggering event was. And you might find it helpful here to use the mnemonic who, what, when, and where. So who, I was with my husband. What happened? We bickered about who was gonna take the kids to school the next day. When, just now, or this morning, or whenever, and where we were in our kitchen. So it just brings that kind of memory back, so we can say, okay, this was the triggering event, this is the emotion. Now we're going to just go back to the thought. So when we're looking at these thoughts, these are negative, automatic thoughts. And these are the kind of thoughts that arise out of how we've given meaning to a situation. And then also about any predictions, assumptions, or worries that we're making, what we think is going to happen next. That also just feeds into that thought stream. Now, this same rule can be applied to a variety of situations. So let's say, for example, that you have to work when all of your friends are going to be meeting up and going to some fancy dinner together. You feel sad, but then you have the thought that you're going to miss out. Maybe you might think that they're going to have so much fun without you. They make so many memories without you. This happens all the time. You're going to end up not being as close to your friends as they are to each other because you're missing out. That's another example. Or maybe you have to stand up and give a speech in a work meeting and you feel scared. And then you might have the thoughts of, I'm going to blank out. What happens if I say the wrong thing? What happens if I blush? I'm going to embarrass myself. And from this, we can see how the actual thought compounds the situation. So what is the initial situation in itself is actually quite harmless. And then we have the feeling that goes with it. And then the feeling that goes with it is fed by thoughts, and also feeds more thoughts. And then it just creates this loop between thoughts and emotions, which gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So what we're actually trying to do by establishing what the thoughts are is we're able to just put the brakes on a little bit. And then we're able to practice a little bit more rational thinking and ask ourselves, is that really true? Okay, so let's go for the example with the work meeting. I'm going to forget what I say. How can I make sure I'm not going to forget what I say? I'm going to put some notes down. How can I make sure I'm not going to go red? Maybe you can't, but maybe that's okay. This is such a big deal. Most people get nervous when they public speak. Or the situation with the friends going out for dinner. I'm going to make sure that I arrange a dinner with my friends soon because I've missed out on so many others. So in that respect, the emotion is the motivating factor. It's the indicator telling us what we need in those situations. But it's from listening to the thoughts that we actually find out what the emotion is trying to tell us. Another important thing to bear in mind when we're talking about emotional regulation and when we're talking about what to do when we feel emotionally reactive is going back to that scale of 0 to 10. And actually thinking in advance of what we will need when we hit a 4 on the scale, an 8 on the scale, or a 10 on the scale. And, we don't have to relive the emotional experiences to know what we're going to need. Sometimes just bringing up a previous experience, a previous emotional experience, keeping yourself safe and, not anything that's going to trigger you, of course, but bringing to mind something which has caused you upset in the past and maybe thinking, do you know what, in that particular time, X, Y, Z would have helped me. When I hit a 10, actually, I shouldn't have tried to speak to my husband when I was a 10 on the emotional reactivity scale. I should have maybe decided to go for a walk, or maybe decided to put on Netflix, or maybe decided to go meditate. Or if you have a 7 I'm going to go to the bathroom and just take 10 deep breaths. So think in advance as well of ways in which you can help it. Coming back to the earlier point I made about avoidance, coping, that's one of the most fundamental things that we need to try and avoid. Like I said earlier, it just builds and builds and creates more problems. I will be doing more videos about avoidance coping and about core beliefs. Like I said earlier, they'll be coming at a later time. But I do hope that you found this information valuable and useful for you today. Now, I do have some worksheets over on the website. So it's the mebamethod.com website. So there are worksheets on there, and you can download these and go through them in your own time. I also have some meditations on the website if you'd like to go and have a look at them. Mindfulness and meditation are proven ways to help with emotional regulation, and this mainly occurs through the improvement of awareness. This is important when we're talking about becoming aware of our emotions and aware of the thoughts that trigger those emotions. So feel free to go over and have a little look at them. They're all free for you to listen to, as well as all the worksheets and other resources that are on there. They are free for you. Also, do take a look at the courses and workshops and programs that are available. And if you need any more information, all the contact details are on the website and you can just drop me a line. Okay, I hope you have liked this video today. If you have, then please give me a like. I would really appreciate it. And share as well. You know, sharing is caring. Maybe you know somebody who you think this video might be useful to. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. See you later.